If there's a quiet voice in you that's convinced you haven't done enough, aren't enough, will never quite earn the right to take up space no matter what you achieve, I want you to know this. You're not unworthy. You're forgetting the deed you already hold. The title to your own worth that was signed the day you were born, and the reason you keep feeling like you have to earn it is that someone taught you, long ago, that you are only renting what was always yours to keep. Here's the strange thing about unworthiness. It almost never matches the facts. You can meet someone who's accomplished extraordinary things, who's loved by everyone around them, who by any reasonable account is doing beautifully, and they'll still feel, deep down, that they're not enough, which tells you something important. The feeling of unworthiness isn't a readout of your actual value. It's a kind of forgetting. Imagine owning a house outright, the deed sitting safe in a drawer, and yet living every day as a frightened tenant, convinced you could be evicted at any moment if you don't keep paying. The ownership is real. The fear is real too. They just have nothing to do with each other. The question is never just, am I worthy? The smarter question is, when did I start believing I was only renting what I already own? Because here's what most people never realize. You did not invent your idea of worth. You absorbed it, early, from the people and the world around you. If you grew up where love was conditional, you learned that worth must be earned. If you were compared to a sibling, you learned that worth is something you fall behind on, that someone is always more deserving. If you were praised only for achievement, you learned that worth is rent, that you're allowed to stay only while you keep paying. You took all of that in before you could question any of it, and it quietly rewrote the deed in your mind, turning something you owned outright into something you had to keep earning the right to hold for other people's purposes on terms you never once agreed to. And believing you're only renting your worth has a cruel feature. The rent never gets paid off, because if your worth is conditional, the conditions can always be raised. If it's relative, someone's always more deserving of the space. If it's performance, the performance never ends. You're not behind on the payments. There were never supposed to be payments at all. No amount of achievement ever buys you the security you already had, because you're trying to purchase, over and over, a thing you were handed free and clear at the start. Keep proving, keep paying, keep needing one more thing before you're finally allowed to rest in being enough. Let me tell you about someone. I'll call her Sophie. Sophie had, by every external measure, made it. A career people admired, a family she loved, a life that looked, from outside, like a quiet success, and she carried a constant low hum of not enough that never let up. Every accomplishment felt like it expired the moment she reached it. She'd hit a goal and feel, for about an hour, that maybe now she'd finally earned her place, and then the feeling would drain away and the sense of being on probation would creep back in. When she looked honestly at where that sense came from, it wasn't hers. Sophie had grown up the less favoured of two daughters, always set beside a golden sister, always told, gently but constantly, that she could do a little better. She absorbed the idea that her place in the family was something she had to keep earning, that love was a lease she could lose if she ever stopped performing. As an adult, she was still paying rent on a home she had owned outright since birth, still trying to buy a security that had been hers all along. She wasn't unworthy. She was exhausting herself, paying off a debt that never existed, living as an anxious tenant in a life whose deed was already, permanently, in her own name. There's real psychology under this, and it comes from a researcher named Kristin Neff, who pioneered the study of self-compassion. She drew a distinction that cuts right to the heart of this. Most of us, she found, try to feel okay about ourselves through self-esteem, which is fundamentally a judgment, an evaluation of whether we measure up, usually by comparing ourselves to others or to a standard. And that's exactly the trap. Self-esteem is contingent. It rises when you succeed and collapses when you fail, and it requires you to be above average, which, by definition, most people can't be. What she proposed instead was self-compassion, treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a friend, not because you'd earned it, but simply because you're a human being who's suffering. Self-compassion, her research shows, gives you a stable sense of worth that doesn't depend on performance at all, because it stops treating worth as something you rent and starts treating it as something you own. So if you've been feeling unworthy, here are 3 things I want you to understand about what's really happening. First, the feeling is real, but the verdict is false. The ache of not enough is genuine, you're not making it up. But what the ache concludes about you, that you're fundamentally lacking, is a case of forgetting, not the truth. You feel unworthy not because you are, but because somewhere along the way you misplaced the deed and started believing you were squatting in your own life. Second, you can go looking for where the deed got hidden, instead of just believing it's gone. Whenever the not enough feeling rises, you can stop and ask, Who first told me I had to earn this, and on whose terms? Trace it back, and you'll almost always find a person, a comparison, a condition from long ago that you never chose. The moment you can see that the demand to keep paying was handed to you rather than written into the world, it loses its grip. You can't argue with a feeling, but you can ask who forged the lease. Third, worth was never a thing to be earned in the first place. The deepest reframe isn't finally paying off the debt. It's realizing there was never a debt, only a deed you'd forgotten you held. Your worth is not a thing you rent through performance. It's the simple, unearnable fact of being a living person. The same worth you'd grant a child or a stranger without a second thought. You don't have to buy your way to it. You only have to remember it was always yours. So stop torturing yourself with a debt that was never yours to pay. You were never unworthy. You were just told, before you were old enough to refuse it, that you were renting what you actually own, and you spent your whole life believing that lie was the truth about your soul. Rumi, the poet, once wrote that you are not a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in a drop. He understood what every false lease tries to make you forget, that your worth was never a small thing to be earned and held on probation, but something vast and whole that was already, fully, irrevocably yours before anyone ever asked you to pay for it. So stop paying rent on yourself. Notice when the old fear of eviction creeps back in, and remember who first taught it to you. And try, even once, to look at yourself the way you'd look at someone you love. Not asking whether they've earned the right to be enough, but simply seeing that they already are. You were never unworthy. You were just living as a tenant in a life whose deed had your name on it all along.